Today we are going to be talking about the whole issue of childcare and what it means not only for families and children, but also in terms of seniors, in terms of community care and the future of our children, and basically how we are going to go forward in terms of addressing the needs of our communities.
We're looking for answers to some of the issues of our youth, of our young people today, and we prayed that you would send some information down to our hearts, our minds, our souls, and our bodies so that we can contribute to a development in our fair city to make things better, especially for generations to come. We ask right now that you bless this meeting, bless this action, bless this outing, that you bless it today. And we pray that you would look down on those who are having problems in our community, especially the young people. We ask these things and we pray for help right now. Say, thank God and amen.
The first person that will speak today will be Dennis Kanta. Dennis Kanta is president of Kanta and Associates Incorporated, a Milwaukee-based company that provides management and consulting services in 3 areas: development of public charter schools, governmental relations, and public policy studies. Mr. Kanta serves as the executive director of the Milwaukee Charter Advocates, was a member of the board of the Wisconsin Charter School Association, and served on the board of the largest charter school management organization located in the city of Milwaukee, Seeds of Health Incorporated. Mr. Kanta is founder of Tenna High School, established as a chartered school which offers students a unique curriculum which blends traditional academic studies with courses of Milwaukee Area Technical College in various trade and technological areas. Students who complete the program graduate with 2 credentials, a high school diploma and an MATC certificate. School was named Charter School of the Year in 2009. That same year, Mr. Kanta was named Charter Person of the Year. In addition to his consulting responsibilities, Mr. Kanta was active in the area of public service until he retired in 2014. Mr. Kanta?
Ethical. I'm interested in birth to 3 programming because it is a necessity to deal with the issue of poverty, to mitigate poverty. I won't go through all the data I have on the nature of poverty in this community.
Thank you.
But when it's all brought together, we have more poverty in the city of Milwaukee per category than any other city in the country. Let me be more specific. We have the highest level of poverty for children under the age of 5 than any city in the country. A Birth to 3 program addresses the issue of poverty at a crucial level, beginning shortly after birth and addressing the needs of a child during the first 4 years of life. It's a very difficult program. A very difficult program to find men and women who are even willing to teach in these kinds of difficult programs. Difficult to find parents, often just one parent who understands the importance of these programs. Difficult to establish some kind of coalition with the gatekeepers, which are hospitals in which a child is born and needs to receive information about the value of these programs as quickly as possible. All of this is necessary together with funding. There are, roughly speaking, 10,000 children on an annual basis born in the city of Milwaukee. Of those 10,000 children, about 4,000 are born under conditions of poverty. What I have tried to do in a pilot program I am addressing is to focus on the 2 zip codes in the city of Milwaukee that have the largest level of poverty. My hope had been to create a pilot program in which we could introduce B3 programming inside of those 2 critical areas. At the moment, there's only a small handful of birth to 3 programs in the city of Milwaukee. Many of you will recognize the Next Door Foundation, a pioneer in this ever. And at a community center, which is the second agency that's beginning to expand its birth to 3, and the Acelero program, as some of you may be familiar with, doing some work here, but most of it in Kenosha and other surrounding counties. Only a small handful of children between the ages of birth and 3 are treated by these programs. So my passion had been, and remains, to try and secure state support of the program. That's the way Lyle has been advancing a very ambitious effort to secure larger amounts of programming for 3 and 4 and 5 traditional Head Start programming, working with employers. So my purpose and my goal is more limited, it's more narrow, but I think it's essential if we're going to begin to address the issue of poverty in this community. We need to begin shortly after birth. If we don't, so much damage is done to a child living in poverty during their first 4 years of life before they're given the opportunity to enter the kinds of early childhood programming that's available. So that's what I've been involved in. I have been, I hesitate to say working with, but I have been meeting with Republicans in the Wisconsin legislature. I have found some general sympathy for this kind of initiative. But, and I'll close with this observation, everything that we're going to talk about today depends upon not the Wisconsin legislature at the moment, but as you may understand, the state Supreme Court. Because what's before the state Supreme Court as we speak is the issue of gerrymandering. If we, or I should say, if the court decides to create a new map for the state of Wisconsin, that map will create a divided legislature which contains men and women who are far more sympathetic toward the program than I'm talking about, that Lyle and Marina are going to be talking about. So gerrymandering at the moment means everything. If we were to maintain a current ratio in the Wisconsin legislature, everything we're going to talk about is very likely to be treated, unlikely to be treated seriously. So that's why I say the underpinning of everything at the moment as we speak during the next several days and weeks is going to be the decision of the state Supreme Court to create new legislative districts.
Our next speaker is Vincent Lyles. Vincent P. Lyles is Executive Director of Milwaukee Succeeds, which oversees extensive community partnership to advance education equality, ensuring all children have the resource they need to succeed. Prior to this, he was Systems Vice President for Community Relations at Aurora Health, where he led Advocate Aurora Health Community Relations and local government works in Wisconsin and Illinois. The program was responsible for providing support to community-based organizations and key community stakeholders committed to the Aurora Community Health Strategy. From 2011 to 2018, He was president and CEO of the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Milwaukee, serving 5,000 youth daily through a variety of programs. President, M&I Community Development Corporation, where he led M&I, an investments effort in low and moderate income areas. M&I was recognized as an industrial leader and maintained an outstanding community reinvestment act rating. Thank you so much for that. Mr. Alice, you're up.
But I've tried to stay pretty close to the political scene here in Milwaukee. You know, we talked about the various roles I've been involved in. Many of them are public-private partnerships. Think about the Boys and Girls Clubs. 50% of their money came from the public sector and 50% came from the private sector. Obviously, Aurora Healthcare. Big chunk of public dollars involved in healthcare. And so it's been interesting for me to kind of ride this wave and get involved in some of these things. And I've been admirers of League of Women Voters and Souls to the Polls and other groups out who we try and get our folks to the polls. And it's a heavy lift, right? Because a lot of people don't believe, right? They simply don't believe, right? They've seen it happen time and time again and things don't go their way. So I don't, you know, what I say to people, and my kids now are aspiring political interests, and I say to them, you know, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Recognize that there's more than politics involved in some of this stuff. A big chunk of what happens in this country really centers around money, dollars and cents. And then it started talking about that with poverty, because that's the reason our kids don't get into early childhood education, right? They don't get into it because their foreparents didn't understand or appreciate what was going on. The reason all of us are sitting in this room today is because there was somebody who grabbed us by the arm and said, I'm going to give you some confidence and courage. And that starts early. That starts when you're holding them. That's when it starts. And speaking to our children about these things make a big difference, whether they go to early childhood education or not. Early childhood education, generally speaking, is another form of that. But we need to love our families even more and our community. We got to fall back in love with our communities too, guys. You know, too many of us kind of turn our head. We know stuff's going on. We kind of turn our head, don't pay as close attention to it as we should. And that's not a slight on any of us that are here, because it's a lot. But, you know, our community needs us in ways that, you know, we just didn't fathom, you know, when I was a young kid growing up in this town, right? Because there are a lot of jobs. You know, mom and dad came to Milwaukee, mid-50s. My dad said, you could work 24 hours a day. There were all these jobs all around, right? And that changes the dynamic of your society when people can work, right? And so we got to work on those issues. So when we talk a little bit about Milwaukee Succeeds, the program that I run is really what we call a backbone organization, meaning we don't have any kids in front of us. We don't have any of what I would call the traditional customer. We do a lot of policy analysis, research. You know, we also do some advocacy work. You know, Dennis talked about our work to try and get the childcare accounts extended. Yeah, we're working in coalition with a lot of people who have lived experiences in this space, right? They are childcare providers, they are parents, they are, who, you know, just a number of people who've had lived experience. We also have, you know, public officials involved in this coalition. But the coalition was meeting every 2 weeks for almost the last year. Up until this month, we were meeting every 2 weeks. And some of you have been on those calls with us, and we invite you to be on the call with us next year as we go through this. We now move to monthly, trying to prepare ourselves for the 2025 legislative season, right? Because this fight ain't over. Thank God we have a Tony Evers. He provides $170 million to us, but that's not enough. No. That money's going to run out in June of 2025. So, you know, part of my optimism is that people like you keep asking, and there's momentum around early childhood education. People are talking about it, right? And so that's good. But, you know, this, if we think about it, this really needs to be something that's a general line item in the budget. It currently is, but in a really minuscule way. Let me talk a little bit about that. So right now, state of Wisconsin is due about $16 million towards early childhood education. $16 million. It equates to about $50 a kid in our state. The child care counts money that came from the federal government was $300 million, right? It makes a huge difference. That $16 million that Wisconsin contributes currently is really centered around how they can trigger the federal money that we call Wisconsin Share, which is the reimbursement dollar that come to child care providers. Those dollars are pretty significant, but even Milwaukee County, we leave money on the table. About $30 million we're eligible for each year or each month, and we collect about 45% of it. Right? So we're leaving money on the table because we don't have enough providers to even understand that. We don't have parents who sign up for it. Part of the reason parents don't sign up for it is because when you go over to the Marshall College building and you have to stand in line and basically prove you're poor every 90 days, people don't want to do that. And I understand that, right? So we got to bring some dignity to this space. And that's what I was talking about when we were talking about how we treat our poor. Bring some dignity to this. Those are some of the other things we could fight for, right? We've got technology that allows us to film this whole thing and record everything and send it to New Zealand in 2 minutes, right? But we're still telling poor people they got to come to the building to sign up for something that's a right to me. They fought for it too. They're paying taxes, right? Their providers, their kids should have support to pay for early childhood education because it makes a difference. Early childhood education makes a difference. And whether you called it grandma's house, you called it Andy's house, whatever you called it, it made a difference. Again, that's why we're sitting in this room today, because it made a difference. That confidence you needed to walk into first grade or kindergarten, right? Because when you were at your house, before you went to kindergarten, you were the man, right? When you go to school, there were a whole bunch of other kids there, you got to figure it out, right? And that's why early childhood education matters. When you get to first grade, when you're starting to do math, if you didn't have some supports or encouragement along the way, math becomes that much harder. So part of the reason we're trying to get this work done, and part of the reason we go after this research, trying to make a difference for people, is because we know how important this is. You know how important this is. And we're trying to build and spread that coalition, make that coalition bigger, so that we have more people at the table. I want Robin Boss at the table. I want him to understand and appreciate what this is. I don't need Robin Boss just for his vote or not his vote. What I need for him to understand is how important this issue is for Wisconsin's growth. We're a state with declining population. If it were not for Hispanics, we'd be losing population, might even lose another congressman. You all remember that? We lost a congressman. That was 30, 45 years ago. So what we've got to do is we got to figure out how we can grow this thing. And some of the growth is not going to look like you and me. It's not going to be sophisticated, blah, blah, blah. It's going to be this gig economy. These kids figure out how to deliver groceries from Whole Foods and Amazon. That's going to be part of our economy. So let's support that too.
Marina was born and raised in Milwaukee and is a proud graduate of the Milwaukee Public Schools system. Marina began her career in public service in 2004, when she became the youngest woman ever to be elected to the Milwaukee County Board. She was reelected 4 times, which included being named the first second female to serve as chairwoman of the county board. Marina was elected Alderwoman of Milwaukee's 14th District in 2020, and with more than 70% of the vote share. She currently serves as chairwoman of the Finance and Personnel Committee, whose main charge is passing a fiscally and socially balanced budget every year. She has successfully authored legislation to provide paid parental leave, local funding for early childhood education, and the city's climate and equity plan.
Thank you. It's so nice to see so many friendly faces here. This April, I will be elected for 20 years. So that road started when I'll share the math, was 22 years old, which I think I met a lot of you back then. What that means is that I got married in elected office, had 2 babies in elected office. Where's my friend that we were talking about? I breastfed the kids in office. That's given me, now I'm schooling my kids in office and providing childcare, which I'm going to talk about as well. It's given me quite a ever-changing lens as I make policy for the city that I love more than anything. I always say when I talk about Milwaukee, I love the city. I will always have its back, but there are some things about it that are really irritating. I won't let anybody else talk about it, but I can talk about it. It's my job to talk about it every day in City Hall. That lens, as Anita mentioned, has pushed me to use that microphone that is so powerful in City Hall that I think about every day when I walk in one of the most beautiful buildings after I drop my kids off, which I'm going to talk about. That's why I put a lot of time into work like my climate and equity plan. It's true. When you become a parent, something in you, we know chemically changes, but you just see the world so differently. And that's why I do stay up at night, mostly because of my children, but also thinking about what we're leaving behind. And like I said, I put a lot of my time in climate, environment, and equity. And additionally, our paid parental leave plan, and then a program that I worked with, Milwaukee Succeeds, and Vincent on, that I'm going to talk about a little bit too, where the city finally put some much needed resources towards early child care and education. And it's those public partnerships that really matter, but symbolically having a mother or father speak out on the council floor, talking about policies with that lens and how it impacts our community. And what I want to talk about is what was mentioned by the 2 gentlemen before me, is as we talk about this, I have to talk about the economics. I think we know, but maybe not the details, and I can tell you because I'm in the thick of it. I think it's important to talk sometimes in the first person. We say, oh, that childcare system is broken. It's so expensive. But when you really peel away the layers, and I will talk in first person. I'm a working person, and I'm not currently living in poverty, but we know many people in our city are. Just to have one of my children in full-time childcare, it is a mortgage payment. I just wrote the check, and I write it in installments, for $1,200 a month for one child. Well, I got 2. And I remember when my son finally got accepted into a lovely Milwaukee public school Montessori, I almost cried because I was so excited for the next 8 years of his life. But I also was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to spend that double mortgage. I mean, can you imagine a second mortgage for a house that you don't even have? It's completely unsustainable. It's no wonder that when I go out in the community and I meet with business owners, small business owners, what do we hear right now? We know it in the city of Milwaukee as well. In City Hall, we have over a 20% vacancy. And the small business owners say, I can't find anyone who wants to work. And then we sit here, we think, how can that be? I can't believe nobody wants to work. They can't work because there's childcare deserts, we call it. Childcare deserts. We also have food deserts as well. And we have a lot of, a desert is no one really wants to live right by any kind of desert. But the fact of the matter is, what working person could have a mortgage or 2 and pay a mortgage or rent? It's just absolutely unsustainable. Then people start thinking, and they say, well, it must be because those childcare workers must be just making a ton of money. They're also living in poverty. And it's just, how can the math, it doesn't add up. When I walk my kids into one of the best childcare providers in my neighborhood, and I'm lucky, but I'll tell you something, the moment I thought about having kids, I got on that wait list. The wait list right now is 2 to 4. I tell people when you get engaged, get on a wait list and hold on, even if you're not sure. I mean, this is stuff that we joke a bit around in our neighborhood. When I'm in the coffee shop in Bayview and we kind of, I wrote another check, but it's the real life day to day. It's just absolutely unsustainable, and it's breaking our economy. And guess who it's impacting more than anybody? Women. It absolutely is. I will always bring this up because it does become more of a women's issue. Did you know that through our partnership that I'm going to talk about really quickly with Milwaukee Succeeds, we found out that it's a double women's issue. Women as mothers, women as the child care providers. Over 90% of child care and early education are women and women of color. So this is absolutely a women's issue. I couldn't believe the data. I mean, I should have anecdotally, but when we put it on paper, we couldn't believe it. So when we actually modify, and that's what our work and our partnership with the Greater Milwaukee Foundation, Milwaukee Succeeds was, Vincent, I felt like if you had more time, you would talk about organizing these childcare providers, hundreds and thousands of them, that it's unsustainable. Had them go to the Capitol and lobby, made them advocates and lobbies to tell those first stories. They did the same thing at City Hall. We had over $400 million in COVID American Rescue Plan money, ARPA money. And I pushed really hard. It should have been over 12 million, but we ended up getting to that partnership between 5 and 7 million to eliminate these childcare deserts. And one of the ways we did it was data-driven and research-based. We put 3 stipends in the pockets, mostly women and women of color, to help stabilize. We're only in a triage year. Stabilize the childcare industry in the city of Milwaukee. Because everything these two gentlemen were talking about statewide is the most critical in the largest city, the state of Wisconsin. So we talk about it statewide, but it hits us more than anybody. And because we're the economic backbone and engine of the state, we need to make sure we're on the right side of this. And so that plan, and I remember sitting before my colleagues and testifying, and we just really hadn't ever used that kind of local funding for childcare before. Just like we had 0 paid parental days until we put our paid parental leave, because that's the disconnect too. If you don't have parental leave, now the women are trying to find, in what I already outlined as an unsustainable situation, putting a 2-month-old baby, because you have to come back to work after 6 weeks, into childcare. And those are the most expensive children to provide for because the ratio is lower, of course, because it makes sense because they're higher in need. So what do? You don't go back to work. That's why right now we've called it so many things, quiet quitting, the great, resignation. It's women saying enough is enough. I remember the days during COVID when I had to work remotely and then my kids were at home, had a virtual learn. All of a sudden I'm a Montessori teacher on top of a mom and I'm trying to be alderwoman. That was unsustainable. And so many parents said, I'm not doing that again. When I do the math, I'm not going to pay that second mortgage. I'm just going to stay at home and either work differently, work from home. I hope what it produces is that it changes and uplifts, that we get higher wages, we get more benefits, we get paid family leave, we get paid parental leave. Other countries do this. We are the outlier. We should not normalize it. It's not normal. You shouldn't live in poverty by choosing to educate and cherish our most important part of our generation in the future. That if you choose that amazing line of work, you shouldn't be punished by those types of wages in a broken system. So our program provided 3 rounds of stipends. I think they're about $500 each, and it stabilized it. It mostly went to women. It provided extra stipends. I mean, that money in people's pockets, especially lower income earners, we know usually goes right back into the economy and stabilize it and had at least people stay there for over a year or two, because what we were seeing was such a high turnover. I mean, I can tell you my own childcare, I'll drop the kids off and I don't even know who I'm saying hi to anymore because it's changing constantly. So we're trying to stabilize it. We're using data. We're making sure that the government, that's my final point, does have a role in this. So when you're talking about Robin Moss and others, you can't turn your head anymore. This is part of our economy. If we want to increase the population, which the mayor wants to get it to almost 1 million people in the city of Milwaukee, this is where we need to invest. Because again, please follow me in the logic. Like, if we want good people to get back into the workforce and we want the good jobs and we want that new economy, we have to invest in it from the beginning, and we have to help working parents succeed and invest in that next generation. So I'm happy that we've started it, but we've got a long way to go. Thank you.
Thank you very much, panel, for the wonderful information that you have given us. I know you're bursting with questions, and you can up and ask your question, please.
This is for you, sir. Where it says Republicans proposed to scrap Ever's $1 billion child care plan. Is this the plan that he somehow extended for 400 years or made it aid to school for 400 years?
No, I think what he was advancing was the per pupil support that the state gives to public education and public schools throughout the state. He didn't identify to the point where, for instance, he might be talking about a category of early childhood. He was talking about the gross amount on an annual basis that would be given to public schools. Not to charter schools, not to voucher schools, but to public schools.
Okay. My second question is, you said there were 3 areas in which Milwaukee had the highest rate of poverty. What were those?
Within Milwaukee Public Schools, reading scores for both math and reading third grade and is it third grade and the second grade as well? Very, very low scores. And the other category is the amount of, which is a larger category, of the amount of people between the ages of 18 and 35 in the city of Milwaukee that are incarcerated.
I am Pat McFarland again. I worked for 50 years in this field, 40 years at MATC and 10 years Head Start and early childhood education. And we organized the first union of child care workers with CASNY, but we never got a contract at daycare services for children. So after 6 years, I gave up, and I, like many others, gave up from working at that agency. We still can't get worthy wages, and that breaks my heart to train our students. Then they go into a low-wage program. As we've described, they can't make it financially. But I do know from the Federal Reserve that $1 of taxes saves us $4, and that's in a mediocre program. $1 of public money saves us $8 in taxes in the future for a regular quality education. For $1, your taxes could save us $12 of future costs. It's a high-quality child care program. So I thank the 3 of you. I thank you, Anita, and I thank the progressives here for taking this seriously. Also, I have recently heard of people walking off the job because young children coming into childcare after being called for COVID are out of control. And the staff go, I was not trained how to handle this violent behavior of 2-year-olds. So we are definitely hurting the brains of young children. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I add to that really quick? What I want to add is when I talked about it being an economics issue, please do not let anyone suggest that the state doesn't have the funding for this.
Right.
They're still sitting on their billions of dollars surplus. And actually, I'm not going to say theirs, it's ours. So, I mean, for the city of Milwaukee, we refuse to continue to have a position with the state of Wisconsin where we're asking for things that we deserve. We deserve our fair share of shared revenue. We deserve our part of the surplus that we sent to the state of Wisconsin. We want it invested right here. And furthermore, as we continue to do other things, figuring out how to fund a Brewers Stadium and including that deal and a ticket tax, this is a matter of priorities. So I ask everyone to recommit to make sure that this is a priority. Because when we do that and we keep the pressure up and we keep talking and talking about it in every space, it does make a difference. And now when we talk about the economics here, I think you can see that we need this now more than ever. And I couldn't think of a more worthy program and funding post-pandemic. Because like you mentioned, the pandemic was hard on workers, women, childcare, and if you're going to invest, and what the city of Milwaukee is trying to use our money for is to rebuild a city going forward and try to have it not look like it did even before the pandemic, you have to make investments here where they matter the most.
I was just going to say, along that same line, and to your point, Pat, 2,800 educators, early childhood educators, have received stipends as of September, right? Think about nearly $2 million going into the pockets of these folks.
Could you speak louder? We can't hear you.
Just going to say, Karen, that in terms of dollars and cents, nearly $2 million have gone to the early childhood educators, right? So again, we haven't crossed over the bridge. We're kind of inching our way across, but we need a more stabilized system, right? This isn't going to work with just COVID dollars, because COVID dollars, hopefully, we don't have that issue for a couple of years. But since we do have it, and we had it, right? stabilizing this industry makes a big difference, right? You talk about the essential workers. The essential workers' families go to early childhood education, right? So essential workers can't do what they do without some stability within where they keep their kids. So that's why this is really important.
Patty, I think I saw your hand up first.
It's been a long time since I have had children in the child care. But one of the things that I did notice then, and I don't know that it's changed a whole lot, is that we rely on private vendors for child care, particularly early childhood care. And I'm thinking to myself, if we developed a model where our public educational system took on a primary responsibility for, I mean, we have the buildings, we have the staff, they're quality, they're regulated. And I know that in some countries, public entities do, in fact, take care of child care from, 3 months on or whatever else. It just seems to be that should be the model that we incorporate. And I don't know if any of you can address the fact whether or not MPS is anywhere close to that. And last but not least, I know that when I had my children, one of the things that was critical was we have before and after school programs. And I guess I want to know how expansive those are with Milwaukee Public Schools and now their community, suburban communities.
I'll talk briefly, and then maybe Vince wants to add to it. So again, as somebody who has a child in the MPS system, a 4-year-old in K4, many MPS schools, but not all of them, specifically, and we've chosen Milwaukee Public Schools, which I'm a big supporter of, in Milwaukee Public School Montessori. We had the ability, the Montessori system, if that's what you choose, starts at K3. So my 3-year-old, I'll never forget when she was walking up those stairs, 3-year-old, that's pretty tiny, and it's a half day. So it's still exciting. And I know some of my parents said to me, this is what they said. And again, we have to have these anecdotal stories. Marina, I would love for my child to get that kind of education at 3 years old when your brain is developing. Seeing her trace those Montessori cursive letters, oh my gosh, it's amazing. I get chills. But they said, I don't know what I was going to do. I can't enroll them because I only have a half day. And where can I find half-day care? Some of it exists, but again, it's a hustle out there. And so I think what's actually hurting MPS indirectly, not intentionally, is that some can't make that choice because of the lack of childcare. So I'm hoping to paint a picture for you as those broken puzzle pieces. We know that there's other places. New York themselves have universal pre-kindergarten. They had to put a lot of money, and it took over a decade and millions of dollars, but it can be done and publicly done too. But I just think one thing right now that is challenging, if you want to get, because then those parents just say, oh, I'll just have the child in daycare because at least I get full day coverage. But I think that they would make better choices if they chose, that type of education, if there was that supplemental care, because that was a struggle. We got lucky because our daycare would take a van and go pick her up from, but that I think was a really unique, expensive option.
Yes. I wish I had a suggestion on all this, but I don't. And Mr. Condon listed the 3 things that are areas. I'm sitting here thinking that is exactly tells me what's wrong in our system. And it's like another piecemeal way of looking at something. And like the test scores, what does that do when we hear that inner city kids are not testing as well as someone else? It says, oh, well, that's a shithole, and those kids coming out of there can't do anything. So we have that zip code, we have incarceration, and what we have is something that's bigger than this. And I know this isn't your fault. When I was poor, and I was poor, middle class poor, there was a program called Title 20. And that's how my son got to go to daycare, was through Title 20 that the county paid for. Where did that go? I don't know. but it was a terrific program because I was sort of divorced and mother of two and no job and going to school. And did I look poor? No. Was I poor and eating starch? Yes. But there's something wrong when you talk about zip codes. I don't like it. I don't like it. And I don't like talking about test scores because something's wrong in there. And I don't know how to talk about it except for saying it like this. I wish I had a solution, but we need bigger picture or bigger something. Do I? Oh.
Yes.
Thoroughly agree with you.
Joan Kessler, my husband and I have had kids in the public schools pretty much for their whole time. I want to talk about the 3-year-old issue. The immersion schools, which are really a hidden gem in Milwaukee in the country, start the kids at age 3. That's when you begin learning the language. And it is an immersion that is really productive at the end because they are fluent in another language, but nobody's paying extra for that service. The school is providing it. There are three immersion schools in Milwaukee, French, Spanish, and German. I'm very familiar with how the German school is done because both of our daughters, well, one daughter because she was too old to start it when they started. It's a gift that is kind of a best kept secret, but it does provide the child care in form by starting the kids at age 3 because they have to learn the language. And you learn it the fastest when the brain is the most malleable, I think. So don't ignore this hidden gem. The immersion schools are really an amazing thing in Milwaukee. And they do provide the child care because you start when the kids will be able to use it.
Question, please. Yes, this is either for this gentleman or the older woman. Is 53206 the area code, the zip code with the highest rate of poverty?
Last time I checked, yes. Concentrated, yes, when we're down.
Thank you. All right. Any last words from our panel?
I'll just say, well, I appreciate the robust conversation. I'm a product of immersion school, Spanish immersion, so I can vouch for that personally. And then I went to Wonky School of Languages too. So I think it's important to tell those stories because it's good to have examples as well. I just think that what I was able to talk about is seeing how much this is an economic issue, how it impacts women and children, and how if we want to rebuild, we need to do it in the right way. And that I do think the pandemic, I hope, taught us something. I mean, remember when parents were in an uproar about schools closing and places closing? And probably I think we might have opened some things a little bit too quickly, in my opinion, but it was because of the fact that people couldn't go back to work without childcare. If we didn't recognize that during that time and finally make the connection that parents can't work when they don't have a great place to take care of their kids, I don't know when we will. So let's use that, what was a very interesting and terrifying experience to many, to try to do better. I think we can. We know other countries are. And clearly we have the resources, is what I'm trying to tell you. I know what you do in the state of Wisconsin. And so I think there is hope, and I ask you to take what we've spoken about here today and continue to make it at the top of your agenda.
Thank you so much.
Now, I think she said it quite well. I will say this, right? It's going to take courage to do something different than what we've done. Because you're right. What we've done in the last several years isn't working. Title 20 was around. Things were working a little bit better. But we allowed the change to happen, right? So we've got to work a little harder, have some courage to move that forward, and continue the dialogue about some of this stuff. Recognize there are going to be some people in the room who don't agree with you, right? But be okay with moving forward as opposed to getting caught up in the conversation between the two of you, right? About your differences. And then efficacy, right? We've got data now where we can find information about anything we want to with these little phones. Follow the data. The data is telling you this system doesn't work. Right. That's what we got to push for, to get other people to help them understand. It doesn't have to be very complicated, but the data provides efficacy around the fact that it doesn't work, as opposed to the anecdotal stories. So we got to do more of that as well. And again, I have to say to all of you, thank you for what you've done, right? You've made a difference in Milwaukee. And as a kid who grew up here on 12th and Burleigh, it's an honor to be in this company, right? So thank you for that. But, I encourage all of you to think about what more we can do. Thank you.
You have one observation, and it pertains to what Joan said a moment ago. We do have a model, and that model is the immersion schools for 3-year-olds. So why are they not, why doesn't MPS have more immersion schools? Where are the money? Well, it gets back to the issue of funding. And it gets back to the issue again, there's a very, very large surplus that is presently existing in the state of Wisconsin. Money that could be used to address the issues that we're raising here this morning. And one of those issues would be more immersion schools inside of Milwaukee Public Schools.
MBS has got to find more emerging teachers.
Yeah.
Right? Somebody told me recently, MPS, last 200 teachers they've hired are from outside the United States. Where he said, well, our kids aren't becoming teachers, is the point I'm trying to make. Right? So there's a connection. And Marina, I thought, said it very well. A bunch of puzzle pieces out here that all are connected.
Again, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
To the panel. Just a few more things, and we're going to close out.
One more question. Teeniest question. I'm just curious, given how serious this is there any effort at all to reach out to parents and organize parents? I mean, the parents actually created the voucher schools, and I don't agree with all that, but it was, some leaders, but a lot of parents. And when they almost raised the taxes, for schools, I saw MPS filled with parents who didn't want to pay higher taxes. So I'm just curious, given how parents need this, is there any effort to reach out and somehow get them involved?
The coalition, that's our work, and Milwaukee Succeeds, right? So we're part of a statewide coalition that helps send 81,000 emails to the Joint Finance Committee around the legislation we were trying to propose, right? We are now training and organizing more than 300 parents around these issues, getting them ready for the next fight. Right? So again, it's a lot of things that have to be done to get these folks to do something different than what they've always done. So.
Okay, I don't want to overlook anybody, because somebody in the back have a question. Are we all, we're all good? Okay, we need a call to action.
Yes.
So I want Dick to come up and talk about a call to action.
Good. Not quite that very man. Come in, but well, I can wait for the Supreme Court to hopefully deliver fair math, and we have flyers about that. We want to make sure that we identify on the fact of this flyer, the legislators. One of the things we did with the league was analyze voters, votes in all the districts, the assembly districts and the Senate districts, identified ones that are most voters or impact. And so we wanted to make sure that those legislators, if contacted, express their displeasure with their misappropriation of their resources to recommend ability work. Recommend tax breaks instead of supporting childcare accounts. And so we suggest that you contact them, let that identify your friends or relatives who live in those districts and let them know about the issue, and then we'll keep you informed as developments occur going forward.
This is why so many times we come to these forums and we hear all of this good information and we do not share it. Share it with your friends. Share it with people you go to church with. Share it with people that you work with. Share it with your neighbors. Don't keep it in here. Share it. And that's why we have these forums. And by the way, if any of you have any ideas about another forum that we have one for December, you're welcome to come and let us know.